started here. I got from the Albuquerque chapter done by Jane and Troy back in 2002, and I've adapted it, shortened it, you'll be glad to know, and threw in some of my own pictures. So these are examples of the aster family, the composite family. There's a four-winged saltbush, which is another family, which I cannot think of right now, but it'll come to me. And then obviously a cactus in the Cactaceae family. There's major classifications for plants. We have animal kingdom and we have plant kingdom. And there's another one now. What's the other one, John?
Fungi.
Fungi, thank you. And the plant kingdom has many divisions. The division we're focusing on now is the Amphiphyta, which is known as the Angiosperms, or the flowering plants. So it is a large group including herbaceous plants, shrubs, grasses, and most trees. And angiosperms are defined as having seeds that are born in an enclosed ovary, as opposed to gymnosperms. And gymno means naked and sperm means seed. Gymnosperms mean naked seed, and that is your conifers, your cycads, which are the ancient plants that were around when the dinosaurs roamed, and ginkgo trees are a gymnosperm. So, as I said, angiosperms are then divided into two subdivisions, the monocotyledons and then the dicotyledons. So when you first look at a plant to identify, one of the first questions is to determine which of these divisions does it belong to, because a lot of books, not so much wildflower books, but some of these other books are divided into the dicotyledon section and the monocot. What is a cotyledon? It means it's comes from the Greek word for katuledon, which means a cup-shaped cavity. And a cotyledon is an embryonic leaf from the Greek. So monocots have flower parts that are usually numbered in 3 or multiples of 3, usually 6. Leaf veins are usually parallel, and here's the examples. And there's about 65,000 species that are considered put in the monocot family, or division. That's a lily, not one of the natives, but there it has the 6 leaves, and then you have these long leaves with veins that run parallel with the edges of the leaves. Your dicotyledons have flower parts usually in numbers 4 or 5 or multiples of 4 and 5. Leaf veins are usually net-like, as in the picture there, and there's approximately 200,000 species. When this was written, they had 170,000 in 2002. And when I Googled it this week, it's up to almost 200,000. So plants are classified by shared morphology. And what is morphology? Morphology is physical appearance, things you can look at, that you can just see. So they're typically members of a family, typically share morphological, chemical, or anatomical features that set them apart from other families. Many of the morphological features that define a family are characteristics of their flowers or their fruits, not necessarily their leaf arrangement. So it's such as the arrangement of florets in a sunflower and the pods in the beans of the Fabaceae family. And so these shared features are often seen as evidence that these members shared a single common ancestor at one time. So a scientific name of a plant, of a family. Families always end in ACEAE, and it comes from adding that ending to a genus name, like Rosa or like Brassica, and come up with that merged name Rosaceae and Brassicaceae. So that's where a family name comes from. But the entire classification for something, for example, the woods rose here, Plantae family, the Amphiphyta, the order Dicotyledoniae, Rosales, the family Rosaceae, and then we have the genus, and genus and species names are usually written in italics. It's taken me a while to get the Taos News to do that. The specific epithet is the Woodsii. The species name is those two combined. So Rosa woodsii, easily called woods rose as its common name. So some basic morphology. Who all took botany? Somebody took botany. Didn't somebody take botany?
They don't teach it in
Third grade?
college anymore.
Basic science? Really? Well, All right, this is flower. Hope you can all go that far. So we're going to be looking at these characteristics in the families. We look at the petals, which all the petals together are called a corolla. So you've got 5 petals, you got a corolla with 5 petals. And then you have these sepals, which are these, get my pointer out. Anyway, the sepals are these little things that come down here, and that the group of sepals constitutes a calyx. Then you have the male part of the plant, which is the stamen, which carries the pollen on the anther, the tip end of it, and then the filament on which the anther is held. And then the female parts, the entire thing is called the pistil or a carpel, and the top of it is a stigma through which the pollen enters, travels down the style, and then into the ovary. All right, that's sex 101. Plant sex. Here's 102, the position of the ovary. And this, you don't worry about these terms, we're not going to use them tonight, except for the inferior and superior. So superior ovary, you can see it's above the petal and the sepals. Whereas inferior ovaries are below, and there's 2 different positions of being below. And all we're going to hear about is inferior and superior. And then there's fruit types. Fleshy fruits, we're not going to get too caught up in the names, but you have fruits, these are berries, they're all berries, but they're different types depending on where the seeds and the fleshy part are. So you've got berries like that are in a tomato. You've got an orange that's a Hesperidium. Cantaloupes are something different, they have a rind, and a palm is an apple, where you've got something enclosing the seeds in the core. And then you have fruit types that are stone or drupe like cherries. So you have a very hard seed. Apricots would be the same thing. So that's a drupe, and sometimes there's druplets. We'll have one of those. Then there's fruit types of which are dry. And so dehiscent, is that how you say it, John? Dehiscent fruits are ones that split open. They go along a line, like a bean or pea pod. And then you have calyx, which is what mustards have. It's 2 cells that then splits apart. And then you have capsule, the short rounded fruit. So that I think is an example of a yucca seed pod. So those are dry dehiscent fruits that split apart. Then you have dry non-dehiscent. And these are ones that have no line of which to break apart. So an acorn, and then these samaras, which are the winged fruit of maples and ash trees. So here's the common dicot families that we will work from that sheet, and we're going through it alphabetically. I will note that the last 2, Plantaginaceae and the Scrophulariaceae, most people know penstemons. Most penstemons for years have been in the scroff family by morphological characteristics. Molecular biology, looking at the genetic material of plants, has really changed some of the classifications to the dismay of people who write guidebooks, the confusion. But what it turns out is that most of the snapdragons and particularly the penstemons, that we have so many around here, are now no longer in the Scrophulariaceae family, but in the Plantaginaceae. So I've just kind of grouped those together. There's a lot I didn't put in here because there were fewer species. And then there's only about 6 common plant families in New Mexico and the monocots, and I'm just going to go over the agaves, the lilies, and the orchids. Grasses is a whole other ball game, as are sedges and rushes. So, to review, the dicots, 2 embryonic leaves, flower parts in 4 or 5, leaf veins net-like in about 200,000 species. And we'll jump right in with the parsley, which starts with A. The Apiaceae used to be called the umbelliferae. And so the Latin word umbellula means a little shade. So that refers to the flowers that are produced in these parasol-shaped clusters. like these radiating spokes of flowers, and it's characteristic of the family. To see that umbel is a little easier to recognize than actual individual flowers because they are quite tiny. If you've ever seen a parsley or one of your dills bolt in the garden, those are little tiny flowers. So you do need a microscope to look at those. So the Apiaceae comprise herbs. The common ones we know are cilantro, dill, and celery. Sepals 5, petals 5, stamens 5. Carpels, which are also the pistils or the ovary, are inferior. We haven't talked about the schizocarp fruits, but typically the stems are hollow, also in members of the parsley family, and leaves can be compound or lobed. As you see in that picture, that's a compound leaf. It's not just a single-edged leaf. Now, the Asteraceae used to be called the Compositae family. They're your sunflowers. So a composite flower comprises 2 different flowers. You've got ray flowers, as you see in the upper left. So those bright yellow petals in your common sunflower, and then the lower right is Zinnia grandiflora, the desert zinnia. So the yellow is the ray flower, and in the center, the different color flowers usually are the disc flowers. Herbs and shrubs comprise the list of asters. There's 620 species in New Mexico.
Oh, wow.
It is one of the biggest families around. I think there's something like over 20, there's hundreds of thousands worldwide. It's one of the hardest families to sort out. I went to a 3-day class last summer. This is the keying just for asters, just for the aster family. All these sheets, double-sided, 8 font or something. It can be a nightmare because what you have to do, the first thing you look at, see that thing called filiary? Under that disc of the flower, that's kind of where you start, is looking at the filaries and their arrangements. So it's a whole different ballgame. It's kind of more fun to just go through the book and try to find the pictures of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so upper left is the common yarrow. Now, having spoken about ray flowers and disc flowers, sometimes you have ray flowers only. So this Agaceras, which is kind of a wild dandelion relative that we have here in the state, has only ray flowers. Your standard common dandelion, only ray flowers. Then there's plants, and then thistles also, only, disc flowers. Okay, then there's plants that only have disc flowers. So they don't have those petals on the outside. So pussy toes, sometimes see, and thistles, those are only disc flowers. And then a lot of them have both. Or most of them probably have both. So I think most everybody, you're going to see some other plants that look like they may be composites, but they will trick you. The Boraginaceae, the forget-me-not family, or borage. Some other common, well, they're often bristly with small flowers. And I did pick one today that I believe is a cryptantha, one of these cat's eyes, that was starting up in my dirt part of my yard. Sepals, 5, they're often fused in the lower part. Petals and stamens, also 5. Now, scorpioid cymes. That means a cyme is an arrangement of flowers. There'll be one at the top and other ones coming down a stem that mature at different times. And scorpioid means it's curled like a scorpion tail. You see a little bit of that up in the cryptantha. The leaves are simple, meaning they're not all fragmented into compound leaves. Alternate, and they're often bristly and hairy. The one that's not bristly is the bluebells, the Martensia. Brassicaceae are the mustards. Herbs and shrubs also. Sepals 4, usually upright. Petals are 4, and cruciform means cross-shaped. They're just across like that. There's about 169 species in the state. Now these have the fruits that are the siliques and silicus. John, am I saying those right? Okay. And the leaves alternate, and we have examples of those already. Western wallflower is one of the prettiest ones you see in the field. Now, when you see the fields of yellow mustards, they're going to start blooming pretty soon. You see the dry field, it's totally dirt right now. it's going to all of a sudden get filled with yellow flowers. Those are tansy mustard usually. And then there's some little purple mustards that are out now I've seen along some of the roadsides. And here's again the fruit type, the silicles. This is a cress. There's also a spectacle pod plant that has its silicles in paired, like little spectacles. So that's a plant that's easy to recognize when it's gone to seed, better than its flower. Although if you see the flower, they would have 4 petals. And then the siliques are the long skinny pods. And Catherine had one of these from something that's some mustard family member that sprouted, went to seed in her greenhouse. And more brassicas, again, hoary cress, the wildflower. This wild candy tuft, which we'd love to get into, there's an Iberis, it's called the candy tuft. It's a common garden plant.
That's one of the ones on the list of
I know
10.
it, yeah.
The Miller's and Rogers.
Yeah, and I have seen it now, I think it was on the Santa Barbara Trail I saw it last year.
It's
And
in
then-
bloom right now.
Yeah,
We saw them, yeah, a lot of them.
You just saw it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we ought to remember where that is and go collect some seeds later. You remember where it is. So
Not exactly, somewhere around.
Somehow we mark
It's
it.
hard to get to, we got lost.
And then there's something here, this Lescarelia, Findler's bladder pod. So often that rounded seed is referred to as a bladder pod. Cactus, Cactaceae, I don't think I need to explain that to anybody. They're usually spiny succulents. There's really no sepals. Everything you look at are the petals. And there's can be, to infinity, and stamens to infinities. There's a lot of them in there. And the fruits are considered berries. And that's a pencil cactus fruit pictured there. Okay. Caryophyllaceae, pinks, which are herbs, meaning just herbaceous plants. They're 5 sepals, 5 petals that are often notched or fringed, and hence the terms I've heard that they look pink, like, who remembers pinking shears? Yeah, you have to be over a certain age for that, I think. Stamens can be 5 to 10. Again, the ovaries are superior. Your fruit is some capsule. The leaves are opposite on these, and often the stem nodes are swollen, where the leaf comes around to the stem. Caryophyllaceae includes common names like sandworts, starworts, nailworts, carnations, dianthus. Wart means something that you use to cure something, to treat something. So nailwort was found to have, I don't know what part of it they used, but supposedly would help get rid of nail fungus. I don't know what starworts did. So these are some common flowers you may recognize. This one with the balloon shape, the Silene Drummondii. Then you've got the Indian pinks, chickweeds. There's a starwort. There's a sandwort up there that's really, it's quite a small plant, but it's so distinctive with those little red dots on its petals. And then this I'm particularly proud of because I saw this growing out on the Rift Valley Trail a couple of years ago. I thought, that's the tip of my hiking pole. So these top flowers are barely 1/4 inch across. And it was just in mass bloom. I got that picture. I went home and I called Chick Keller over in Los Alamos, and John was gone, and said, help me, what is this? And so he just told me it was in the pink family, and I found this, common name nailwort. And it had never been identified. When you look at a botanical reference website that shows locations of where plants have been reported over the years, it's never been reported in this part of New Mexico.
Wow.
So he said, go back, get some samples, and take them to John to put in the herbarium, which are still waiting to be mounted, I think.
Correct.
Yeah, I need to get out there and do that. Chenopodium, it's CH, Chenopodia, right? Chenopodium, that's right. Common name is a goosefoot family. Herbs and shrubs, mealy, scruffy surfaces. You can see how just fuzzy that looks. It has only sepals, masquerading as petals. There's no petals. And then the whole perianth, the flower, is usually green and rather inconspicuous. Leaves alternate and simple. That's the famous exotic species of the chenopodiaceae is the kochia and the Russian thistle. the tumbleweeds. But we do have a lot of native species, especially in the Atriplex species, which are the four-winged saltbush. Huh? Yeah. And this is how it got its name: goosefoots. Plants versus a goose feet, how they look like. And then another common one is the winter fat that you see that apparently is very high in fat, and this used to be grazed by sheep in the winter when they needed more fat.
Question, that looks like what the native people call Kilitis? Is it lamb's quarter? Is that?
The lamb's quarter is also in that family too. Yes. So it has the winter fats, the salt bushes, the Atriplex, and then the lamb's quarters, yes, is also a member. And a lot of these are adapted to alkaline environments. Convolvulaceae is the morning glory family, 47 species, herbs, shrubs, and vines, mostly vines. The common one we see around here, which is you don't like, is the bindweed, and it is real cute. 5 sepals, 5 petals. These 5 petals are merged. You do not see separation between those petals. They're completely fused. They often have milky sap. There's a bush morning glory, which last month when Steve Giesler came and talked to us about the highway restoration, this is one of the species they put in seed mixes to put on the side of highways. Other common members of the morning glory family are dodder. Have you ever heard of dodder? Which is a weird looking,
Viney.
it has like viney, can be orange. It doesn't even look like a plant. It looks like packing material throughout.
It looks like spider webs.
Or a big
Does
mat
it?
or something.
And dichondra, and those dichondra I think is a common plant used in greenery, nurseries, greenhouses, in pots. The Fabaceae family, beans and peas, 273 species. Herbs, they can be any herbs, shrubs, trees, and vines. 5 fused sepals. The petals, also number 5, and here's a new term, zygomorphic. That means they are irregular. They are bilaterally symmetrical. So if you take that pink blossom and you slice it down the middle, then both halves will be symmetrical. And what happens to these 5 petals is that the top one is fused, right? The top one's fused, no, 1, 2, 3. The bottom 2 that make the keel, you see the standard and wings and a keel. The keel is actually 2 fused petals. One of the favorite ones I like to see on mountain hikes is the Thermopsis, the banner pea plant, which is, again, an early spring yellow one. They are legumes, and the leaves are alternate, mostly compound, and most of the plants can be distinguished by their pods. You have to wait till they go to pod because the flowers are so similar. You have to wait till they go to seed. Here's some more examples. The alpine lupins, all lupins are in the Fabaceae family. Local weeds, also there's some crazy weeds too that are a different genus, Oxytropis. Clover, alpine clover, the trifolium, and dahlia, the purple prairie clover. And waterleafs, the Hydrophyllaceae. Hydro meaning water, phylla meaning leaf. 34 species in that. There's not too many up in northern New Mexico I looked up. The most common one is a Phacelia. There's a lot of species of Phacelia that are called scorpionweed. And again, this term of a scorpioid flower arrangement. And 5 petals, 5 sepals, and often those petals, the sepals are, the stamens, the 5 stamen, the male anthers extend out past the flower. Lamiaceae, the mints, herbs and shrub, and usually the stems are aromatic. And the stems are usually squarish, so you can just take it, you can't really roll it, it's got sides to it. It's not always a reliable diagnostic characteristic, but it will guide you. Sepals 5, and again, the petals, the flowers are zygomorphic, bilaterally symmetrical. And they're usually 2 lips, so an upper lip and a lower lip. Common one around here is that self-heal, the Prunella vulgaris, and Scutellarias are another one. Some more mints, more common one you see out on The mountain hikes are the monarda, or bee balm, or wild bergamot. Again, if somebody said they saw a bee balm and somebody else said they saw a wild bergamot, do you think you're going to be looking for two plants in the book? No, it's one. Salvias, all salvias are in the mint family. This is a fantastic, beautiful purplish blue one. It's down at the Santa Fe Botanical Garden. And Diana's were blooming last year.
Yeah.
They're taking off nicely. I don't know if mine wintered over. This one on the right, American water horehound, we found at a Judy's place on the Rio Fernando when we were doing a bee walk last summer with Olivia from Santa Fe. And didn't know what that was, but it had a square stem and took it home. And often in the mint family, you will see flowers either arranged at the top terminal or there at the axis between a leaf and a stem. You'll see clusters there. Malvaceae, the mallows, 46 species. Again, herbs, shrubs, and trees. Sepals 5, and often the lower part is fused, so they're just separate at the top. Petals 5, stamens can be multiple and often fused together. The common one we see around here is our beloved hollyhock, which is not native, but it is in the mallow family.
Where are they from, do you know? The hollyhocks?
Most everything seems to come from Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
I can't, you remember, John?
Around Mediterranean.
Is it Mediterranean? Yeah. Where did I see hollyhocks? I saw hollyhocks in Morocco.
So did they came on with the Spanish?
They, yeah, probably brought them with the Spanish, yeah.
Yeah, they were brought by the early Spanish settlers. There's some religious stories and traditions around them.
Oh, that's cool.
And here's some more mallows. There's a white checker mallow, Sidalcia. And then there's a pink globe mallow. There was an orange one on the first picture. And then another common one that grows great in gardens, and it is a native, is the Calorol poppy mallow or wine cups. And an interesting little factoid, the original marsh mallow was Althea officinalis, which we don't have in New Mexico, and those roots were used to make the candy we now know as marshmallow. Nyctaginaceae, the 4 o'clocks, herbs, sepals that are 5 and united, and those are sepals, they're not petals because there are no petals. The stamens, there's 5 of those, and just some other little details. The most common one around here is a Mirabilis multiflora, the desert 4 o'clock, which is an amazing plant, completely dies back, nothing on the ground, and all of a sudden you see out of hard ground, dry, hard, hot areas, it just comes back. It's got a taproot that apparently can go down 20 feet. I've seen pictures of people digging those up. And then they get those beautiful purple blossoms. There's another Mirabilis, and I think often the stamens often stick out inside the flower. Sand verbenas are another species that you'll find around here. And then the Onagraceae, the evening primroses. Again, can be herbs and shrubs. Sepals 2 or 4, petals 4, stamens are 8. The yellow one is the Hooker's evening primrose, which you see really all over town, especially on the slopes, driving up to the ski valley in the summer. And those things get like 3 feet tall. Really, really tall. And those yellow flowers open in the morning. They're closed by evening. They probably open late in the evening and close up by afternoon. And what's labeled there on the bottom description, the hypanthium, is actually a floral tube. It's just an elongated tube that goes down to the stem. And the stigmas, again, the top of the pistil, with which there's 4, the carpel and the ovary are the same thing, often are fused in that little cross shape. Fireweed, epilobium, they're also in the evening primrose family. And gaura, I love gauras. If you see those, there's a gaura coccinea that's really, really pretty. And sometimes the petals can be displaced to one side, and that's true in both the fireweed and the gaura. Evening primroses you see out on trails, often white. They look like somebody's discarded white tissue paper, but it turns out it's those. And they just grow in the driest places imaginable. Polygonaceae, the phlox family. 5 petals and 5 sepals, and the flowers are often funnel formed. They have 5 stamen, and you can see on this lower phlox, the stamen are hardly extended outside the floral tube. And the stigma, if you can get a close look at it, again, that's the top of the pistil, is often 3-lobed. So in the mountains, there's a Polemonium species. It's a Jacob's ladder. You may have seen it alpine. My favorite one that you find in, again, hot, dry places is the Ipomopsis aggregata, which is also called skyrocket scarlet gilia.
Are those petals fused at the base?
Of
The base of the petals?
It says flowers are often funnel formed, so I assume that that means the petals are fused.
Yeah.
Polygonaceae, buckwheats, 88 species. I'm going to suggest you come next month where Bob Pennington, who's the owner of Agua Fria Nursery and a founder of the Eriogonum Society. Eriogonum is the species of our native buckwheats. Bob's going to give a whole evening's talk on just the Eriogonum species. This is the red root buckwheat is the most common we have around here. So I'm going to make you come back. We'll just move on. Ranunculaceae, the buttercups, can be herbs, shrubs, or vines. Sepals can be 3 to, I guess X was on, I don't know what the X means, 3 to more. There's no petals, again, it's all sepals. So here, this bottom right, if you just came up to that, wouldn't you think, oh, that's a composite? Like a sunflower of some sort? Well, in fact, it's not. That's just a lot of stamens. You see the number is infinity. And the sepals are 3 or multiples of 3 that look like the petals. Delphiniums, the monkshood, again, the leaves are pretty recognizable. They're very palmate. They're very spread like that. Both your native, your garden variety, and the ones out in the wild. More, there's variable sepal shapes within the family. Who would know the columbine is also in the same family, related to the marsh marigold. And then the clematis, the viney clematis. One of my favorite ones to spot is this Thalictrum fendlori, the meadow rue. It has leaves that look a lot like columbine, but they're usually smaller. And when you see it in bloom, and I didn't realize this till studying up, that the male and female are 2 different plants. So it's a dioecious sexually, meaning there's 2 different houses. One plant has male flowers and the other plant has female flowers. So the male is easy to recognize. And you see what looks like flowers, but in fact that's just sepals, and with all those stamens with anthers laden with pollen hanging down. So on the right is a lot of them, and then there's the close-up. And then the females have just the sepals only and no petals. And they really spread out and they're quite that bright purple. I've not seen one of those, just the pictures. 85 species in the rose family. It's a very diverse family. It can be herbs, shrubs, and trees. Sepals 5, petals 5, stamens few to just hundreds. 1 ovary. And the hypanthium, let's see, the hypanthium is a floral tube also. Sometimes it extends down to a floral tube. And the leaves are often alternate. But here's examples of the fruit types in just this one family. You've got all these fruits that we talked about in that first picture. So apples, the palms are in the rose family. You've got the cherries, you've got plums, you've got the druplets, the raspberries, and then you've got the Apache plume, which has what they call a keen or a achene seed pod. One seed with all those plumes on it. All in the rose family. And so there's the woods rose, all our wild plums, virtually all your fruit, most of your fruit trees. Red raspberries. Here's a mountain spray. That's a beautiful shrub you see out on hikes. And then this low growing prairie smoke, the geum, and where the flowers hang down. The nightshade family, Solanaceae. And nightshades, of course, cover your tomatoes and your potatoes. And it can be, again, herbs, shrubs, vines, or trees. Numbers are 5, stamens are 5. Fruits can be berries or capsules. There's the tomatia. And what's interesting there, the sepals often are persistent with the fruit. So you know that papery coating that you get on your tomatillo and on those paper lantern plants too. Those are actually the sepals that hang around. There's the capsule of the Datura radii, that green spiky thing. And the Nicotianas, the tobaccos, are in this family. Petunias are also in the nightshade family, which I found interesting. And of course, many species are poisonous. So here's the combination of the Scrophulariaceae. The old name was the figwort family, which only has 8 species. Now, it had a lot more when it had the penstemons in it. And then the Plantaginaceae, which has now has the penstemons. So 5 sepals, 5 petals. Again, zygomorphic. It's a bilaterally symmetrical flower. The stamens are arranged in, that should be 2. It's 2 plus 2, if they're kind of paired off. So this is the term for dynamis. So 2 pairs, and then there's a 5th stamen that is usually sterile. So if you look inside the mouth of a penstemon, you will see 5 what look to be stamens, but one of them doesn't function. This is just one example of the many species of penstemons around here. Again, the petals are fused. The 3 bottom ones are somewhat fused together, sometimes completely fused into a tube, and then 2 on the top that are fused, and then you have a deep throat. Its common name for penstemons is also beard tongue, because often on that lower part of the flower, up at the upper left, where you see that yellow fuzz, that's how it got its name, beard tongue. Also in that family are the mullins and the little mimulus monkey flowers you see by the streams. And the mullins are different. They have a regular shaped flower, which is actinomorphic as opposed to the zygomorphic, the irregular flower. The Verbenaceae family, verbenas and vervains. 32 species in the state, but there's really only a couple of them here in northern New Mexico. But they're really beautiful when you see it. Apparently the vervain, the glandularia by pinnatifida, is blooming now in places, at least down in the Albuquerque and Santa Fe area. Sometimes those verbenas, they have kind of a squarish stem, but they're rarely aromatic like the mints. Sepals 4 to 5, the petals can be either irregular or the zygomorphic, or they can be the actinomorphic, the regular ones. So the ones up on top, when you have 5 petals, that's what you call, would be radially symmetrical. You cut that into a pie, and every section looks the same. And the McDougall's verbena is a very common one too. So that's the end of the dicot list as we're covering it today. And we'll go to the monocots. Just to remind you, it has a single leaf as the seed sprouts and breaks soil. And again, leaves on the flower parts are multiples of 3 with parallel leaf veins and approximately 65,000 species. Not in New Mexico, throughout the world. Okay, the agaves are one of our most common. We do not have too many agaves up here, but we have the yuccas, obviously, and those are both in the agave family. The leaves persisting in a basal rosette, we all know that. All those leaves come from the bottom and go up as a rosette. If you're looking real closely and don't know the difference between an agave and a yucca, the agave will have an inferior ovary and the yuccas will have superior ovaries. And you know, even though yucca is the state flower of New Mexico, and has been argued by some people like, well, which species? And apparently there was never a species designated, so it's just yucca, so it can be any yucca. The lily family, Lamiaceae. Herbs, and they're often bulbs or rhizomes that grow into the ground. Here's a new term, a perianth of tepals. So a perianth is the whole arrangement of sepals and petals, and sometimes they can't be distinguished, so then they're called collectively tepals. Or you can see that they're really 3 sepals and 3 petals. And 6 stamen, and the leaves are always slender and grass-like. So you all have probably seen the wild onions, and also the Mariposa lily. And those lilies throughout the Southwest can be pink, purple, white. There's your greenhouse lily up there. And then the elegant death camas is also in this family, which is a beautiful, beautiful plant and quite poisonous. I don't know what part is poisonous. Do you, John?
The leaves and stem roots.
Are they? And the orchid family, believe it or not, there's 33 species of orchids in New Mexico. There's one that's chlorophyllous, it's not green, the spotted coral root with that beautiful little flower. The calypso orchid is often seen, and then the lady slippers orchid. Again, there's 3 sepals and 3 petals, but they're fused in different ways to make this lip that's often quite elaborate. What's the species over in the Box Canyon at Ghost Ranch? Do you remember?
It's a calypso.
It's a calypso? Yeah. You need a wet summer at the right time to find that. Just quickly, grasses. There's 427 species of grasses. That's a whole different ballgame. My husband Russ over here took a 3-day course in identifying grasses, and he does pretty well. Figuring out what's in our yard, and now he's taken out the imported. Our state grass is the Butaloa gracilis, the blue grama. Thank you very much. Yes. And then the other one is the Sidotes grama, which I like. Sedges, these are often found in wetland areas. And again, lots and lots of species in the state, and rushes. What there used to be an old saying, sedges have edges and rushes are round. I think that's it for the stems or the stems of, so you might be able to differentiate a sedge from a rush just by knowing that. So then here's the list that you also have, and these are all the ones I didn't even cover, because there's really not that many. But you may wonder, well, the sumacs, well, there's the families, there's only 8 species in there. So that's in, like I said, I added the milkweeds in the Asclepiadaceae family. And Asclepias is the genus of your milkweeds, your wild milkweeds. And then the iris and blue-eyed grasses in the Iridaceae family.
That was great.
Wow, Jan.
I have to thank the original people for doing the bones of this. So it was easy to add on and put in some of my own pictures. So, any questions? Anything we want to back up to? Or
Can I ask you about prickly poppies?
prickly poppies.
Just because they're kind of common in the national forest and stuff.
They're in the poppy family,
Oh, there they are.
Papaveracea. Yeah,
Okay.
so they truly are a poppy. That and the Mexican gold poppies, of course, down in the southern part of the state. We don't get those here. Purslane, that's Eaton, is in the Portulaca family.
And that's not native to here, right? Purslane.
Purslane, I don't know. John, do you know if purslane's native? Anybody? Or was it brought in?
I don't think it's native.
Yeah, I heard it was brought in.
It is native.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. We've got books here, we can look all these up if you're interested. So we do have samples of some of these flowers. We even have a couple magnifying glass and a dissecting scope if anybody is interested in actually taking a closer look.
I have a question.
Yes?
Do the morning glories ever revert into bindweed if they're just like left alone? And they do not.
Bindweed is bindweed, it's its own species. In fact, there's at least 2 species of plants that are called bindweed.
Mine's
Yeah.
not native, is it?
Bindweed is not native, no.
It's like a serious alien.
Yes. Lots of these things like the tumbleweed, the bindweed came in shipments of grain or with the hay they were feeding the horses with, brought in mostly by the Spanish. So they date back only till the 1600s. Yes?
I have a book called, it's quite heavy, but it's really been great. It's called Weeds of the West.
Weeds of the West is an
And that-
excellent reference
If you
also.
look at almost every one of those,
Yes.
it says it came in, in the from Asia or on sheep or in the fur or
Yes.
animals.
They thought,
We wouldn't have any plants at all.
no. Well, and then most of your garden horticultural things often came from England, but they came to England from China.
Yeah.
China and South and Asia is just, a hotbed of botanic diversity, and we would not have near what we have
No.
planted in our gardens if it wasn't for those imports. Yes.
Wonderful book I got from our library 3 or 4 years ago is Gardens of New Spain.
Gardens of New
And
Spain.
it's
Yes.
fascinating. Yes, you're right that a lot came with various populations migrating here, but many came from South America too, and were
Yes.
traded centuries and centuries ago. And
Right.
spread. And many also started out in the Middle East, and then were brought across Northern Africa, Spain, and then to here. So
Right.
the sources are fascinating and diverse.
Yes, and South Africa has been a source of a lot of horticultural things. The ice plants,
Oh, really? They're from South.
Delosperma, are from South Africa. Yeah, first time I saw those in mass was along roadsides in San Diego.
I was gonna say California.
they
California
grow
uses a lot of them because they're very, very xeric, and they can be very colorful. Yes.
Is there a good resource for the native plants for those people who are wanting to really promote native plants in their gardens?
We happen to have a book for you right here. Yes. Yes. A few years ago. Oops, that's not. Did we have that one?
Yeah.
About a dozen years ago, the northern chapter, which was basically Taos, and the southern chapters of Native Plant Society and the Albuquerque area made 3 booklets. And this is the one for gardening in northern New Mexico. And then Albuquerque just redid theirs, their central New Mexico, and it is available online. Now, it took a lot of people doing a lot of work because there were no proofs. There was no original photos that anybody could find. And it's the same thing with this one. So that is something I would like to see happen, is at least get it. I mean, somebody retyped all the stuff from Albuquerque. They didn't just scan it. And the photos have been, I think, replaced with newer and better ones. But it would be great to get this as an online resource. And I could probably get a grant from the state to help with that. This is done by Sally Wasowski, who was the original founder of this chapter in 1999. And it's arranged by the 6 habitats of the Taos area. So your sage scrub, your pinyon juniper, your riparian zones, your conifer forests, and then sedge meadows. That's actually a habitat. Those with the wet places along the rivers. So it has what grows where.
The 3 books, are they different editions, or is it?
There's one for each part of the state.
Okay, thank you.
There's what grows in Las Cruces.
Yes.
Yeah, not going to happen here. Yeah. And this is for sale for $12. So anything else? If no questions, you can come up and see what we do, a little show and tell. With plants from our gardens and our yards today.